Find the equation of the tangent line for y equals sine of 3x divided by x at the point x equals to pi over 2. To find the equation of the tangent line, we need the x and y coordinates of the point. Right now we have only an x coordinate, so the first thing we need to do is find the corresponding y coordinate by plugging the x coordinate into the function of sine of 3x over x. So the y coordinate will correspond to y of pi over 2. Plugging that in, I'm going to have the sine of 3 times the pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, all over pi over 2. Well, the sine of 3 pi over 2 is a negative 1 over the pi over 2. We can now reciprocate the denominator, and it'll become 2 over pi, and multiply the 2. And that'll give us a negative 2 over pi. So we have the point pi over 2, comma, negative 2 over pi. The next thing we need is the slope of the tangent line, and that's the derivative. So now we're going to take the derivative of the function, the derivative of y prime, or dy dx, will be found, well, in this case we have a quotient of functions here for y, so using the quotient rule, the derivative of the numerator, that'll be a cosine of 3x multiplied by the derivative of the inside, which will be a 3 to complete the chain rule. Derivative of the numerator times the denominator left alone minus the numerator left alone, sine of 3x, times the derivative of the denominator, which is a 1, and the entire thing divided by the denominator squared. Let's write this a little bit nicer before we plug in. This first term, the 3 and the x, will not be inside the cosine, this 3 and x. They will move to the front. The other 3x is inside the cosine. They'll stay there. And then minus sine of 3x times 1. Anything times 1 is itself, all over x squared. The slope is found by evaluating the derivative at the specific x coordinate of our point. That's pi over 2. So our slope is going to be y prime of pi over 2, which will give us 3 pi over 2 times the cosine of 3 pi over 2 minus the sine of 3 pi over 2, and that entire thing over pi divided by 2 quantity squared. So we have 3 pi over 2 times the cosine of 3 pi over 2, that happens to be a 0, minus the sine of 3 pi over 2, which is a negative 1. And then all over, and then we can square pi squared over 2 squared, pi squared over 4. Now in the numerator we have a 0 minus a negative 1, so 0 plus 1 over pi squared over 4. So our slope, or y prime of pi over 2, is going to be a 1 over pi squared over 4. Well, we can reciprocate the fraction in the denominator, 4 over pi squared, to multiply with the numerator, and that will give us 4 over pi squared. So there's our slope. And now we can set up the point slope formula. Y minus the y coordinate of the point, that's right there, negative 2 over pi, equals to the slope, we just found that, 4 over pi squared, times x minus the x coordinate. That's right here. That's the pi over 2. So this is the point slope formula. We're going to want to put it into the slope-intercept form where we solve for y. To do that, we will first say minus a negative is a plus 2 over pi. And then here we're going to distribute the 4 over pi squared in. And that will give us 4 over pi squared x. And then multiplying with the pi over 2 will give us a 4 pi over So you multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators, 2 pi squared. Now we can reduce that down some, and we'll probably want to do that before anything else. I'll leave everything else the same except this term here. We can cancel one of the pi's out, and we can cancel the 4 and the 2 here to leave us a 2 in the numerator. There's still a pi in the denominator. We only canceled one of the pi's out, so it'll be minus a 2 over pi. And to complete it, we're now going to subtract the 2 over pi on both sides so that we can solve for this y. We can isolate it. And we have the 4 over pi squared times x minus 2 over pi, and then minus another 2 over pi. Well, those have a common denominator, so they can combine together. And we have 4 over pi squared times x minus 4 over pi. It might look a little strange at first, but remember, pi is just a number, so 4 over pi squared, the slope, is just some kind of number. It's 4 over 3.14 quantity squared, and then minus 4 over pi, again, some number. So this is a number times x, and combined with a number, it's actually in the slope-intercept form. And this will represent the equation of the tangent line to that function y at the point x equals pi over 2. It's y equals 4 over pi squared x minus 4 over pi.